Everybody listen to We're Not Wizards, because we are the best, and we're not wizards, no matter what anybody says. Goodbye.
Welcome to another episode of We're Not Wizards. My name's Richard. I'll be your host for May or June. Could be May. I don't know. I'm feeling a bit confused, maybe a little bit lost. I need somebody who's going to help me. I need somebody who's going to be a hero, who's going to guide me, maybe in the direction that I'm going in. And I thought, if I'm going to need somebody who's going to be a hero for me, I need somebody who's not only being the hero, but they're bringing the hero. So joining me, I've got Wesley Cone, who's here to talk about Hero, the card game, which is currently on Kickstarter. So, hello, Wesley.
Hey, thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. How are you doing, sir? How are you doing in this, as we go into summer? And things are starting to get a little hotter and everything like that. How are you well?
Yeah, I'm doing well overall. Family's good. Work is good. Enjoying this Kickstarter that's up and running. The local community is starting to open up a little bit after the kind of onset of the coronavirus stuff. And I'll go ahead and put out a quick shout out as a thank you to all the real heroes in our world currently, whether it be, medical staff or, yesterday was Memorial Day. And so just thank you for the fallen soldiers as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's a lot of, it's interesting we're finding out who the real heroes are at the moment. And it turns out it's not billionaires. Who knew? Who knew? But we're here to talk about your suddenly successful Kickstarter, Hero, the card game, which I've seen your updates, and I think to say that you were surprised as everybody else that it kind of funded.
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, you must be. How are you feeling about that?
Yeah, suddenly successful is an interesting turn of phrase. 3.5 years worth of time and energy of, wife and daughter in bed and, staying up late and trying to pull it all together and make something good, make something fun for people, going to local conventions and going to local game stores and getting play testers. So going into it, I think that a big part of my heart is just thankfulness for all the different people that have been involved in the process and the experience. And so I think that when I went in, being a first-time indie designer, you get into the forums on Facebook and the other designers, and there's thousands of us, just reading the things that they say and, oh, yeah, kickstarting is so hard. And, being a little guy and not being a big publisher, you don't really stand a chance of success, and you have to spend, thousands and thousands of dollars in order to find success. And so, putting it up there is kind of like, okay, well, I've put in the work. I've been pregnant for a while now, and I'm ready to give birth to this baby.
There's always that popular thing. I've heard the phrase many a time when it comes to kind of anybody in the entertainment industry, which is like, yeah, it took them 15 years to be an overnight success kind of thing. Exactly. Which is like, it's when people kind of get into the public eye. I mean, if we kind of dial the clock way back a little bit, because we like to have a kind of a little bit of a look back at the past, as well as obviously discussing what you're doing at the present. Have you always been a kind of a creative type sort? I mean, I get most people play board games. There's no point in me asking you, you know, when did you first get into board games? Because everybody has the same kind of standard answer. But in terms of the creative side of you, have you always been a little bit kind of creative yourself, kind of growing up and things like that?
I think like many designers, and I don't want to speak on behalf of all of them, but I'm definitely been considered strange and weird for large parts of my life, by friends and enemies alike. Yeah. But yeah, so when I was little, you know, of course the game designing began early on. That was pretty normal, but I think that's pretty normal with most game designers, you know, creating your own games and whatnot. But I've always, you know, been doing theater since I was pretty little.
Okay.
I'm definitely not talented in the standard arts though, in terms of like drawing and painting or even handwriting for that matter. Oof. Yeah.
Have you got handwriting like a doctor?
Yeah, I'm actually, you know, I'm an English teacher, and I've got this really bad handwriting. So you go to write on the board, and your kids look at you and are like, "Man, how do we trust this guy?" Yeah.
I'm here to educate you about how to understand and communicate the words of English, and they're just like that. It's like I didn't know that was English until you actually told me that was English. I didn't know if you were doing like an impressionist painting kind of on the board. I mean, it can't be that. But are you the type of person that even if you're writing capitals, people
there's a reason I definitely like repeat myself like over and over so that they make sure they understand what I've written on the board, right?
It's like I take it everybody can go and they say, well, that's somebody that's been educated by Wesley Cone. It's like the technically in his head he's a marvel at the language, but you know I've seen his written work and you know it looked like somebody put a candle in a microwave.
Kid can write a great essay, you know, great composition, you know, thought structure is beautiful, but when it comes to, you know, making sense of, you know, the scribble, you know, you'd think they're hieroglyphs.
It's like one of those stereograph 3D image things where I stared at it with one eye for 30 seconds and eventually I could see like a pterodactyl kind of coming out at me in like some kind of like 3D shit. That's terrible. You know, I'm totally ripping you for your writing. I've never actually seen it. I am, however, very glad that we did a lot of our communication through email.
Yes.
You know, so I didn't have to worry about kind of writing back and saying, "Dear Mr. Curry, thank you very much for your email dated regarding your game." Did you? But I mean, in terms of you kind of creating games, I mean, did you? For me, a lot of people seem to go down a route. They either kind of they're inventing their own games from the kind of the off. Like somebody's, you know, they're getting playing cards and they're putting white stickers over them and they're drawing their own stuff. Or
we definitely all go through that phase. Yeah, so I think a big part of it for me was like, you know, when I was little, obviously, like, you know, I super imaginative, played in the woods out behind the house, and you know, my family had a little bit of land, not a ton, but had a good little bit where I could explore the woods, and you know, so I'd run around the woods and create stories in my head, and you know, there was, you know, a witch living at the top of the tree, and you had to, you know, run away, and you know, you'd build forts, you know, with random scrap pieces of wood, you know, and they weren't really forts, but we pretended they were, and so, yeah, the story creation piece was definitely there since I was really little. And then got to middle school, you know, really started picking up video games in about 4th grade. And then once I got up into like 6th and 7th grade, so about, you know, 11, 12 years old, all of a sudden I was, you know, Pokemon, the trading card game came out, right? I started collecting those cards, but they cost a lot of money and booster packs were expensive. And my mom and dad were like, "Oh, we're not gonna spend a lot of money on booster packs. It's just a waste of money," which honestly it sort of was. But you know, kind of looking back at it, and it was fun and spending time with people. And so what I started doing was I got index cards, and I had two younger brothers, so I cut up the index cards and I drew little creatures on them and gave them basic stat values and, very, very basic. In fact, not wildly different than what you see on Hero. On Hero you have an attack and a defense, and it was really the same on that first card game, which is kind of a weird kind of coming back to the original, right? So that was that. And then, all the way throughout high school, we had a lot of kids in our neighborhood, so I would create these epic, almost like LARP sessions. I wouldn't have called it that at the time, but, kids running around with balls in their hands and chucking them at each other all the way around the neighborhood. And, each kid had their own backyard and it was their kingdom. But if you hit somebody with a ball, then their kingdom became yours and that kind of stuff. Right. So
you found yourself a bit of an organizer then. You were kind of heading up and
absolutely.
Giving directions and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and it even continued into college, because when I got into college, I had heard about a neighboring university who did a thing called sock war assassination. And, you get a whole bunch of people on board and basically you assign them all somebody. And if you hit them with a sock, they're knocked out and you're given a target and you have to knock them out. And then if you knock them out, you get their target and you go after the next person until there's only one person remaining. But we would basically, you'd see people just break out running across campus after each other, with a sock and,
I think it was a rolled up sock. I take it that did the person that win, did they figure out if they put a stone in their sock, they won every time because they could get extra distance.
Wow, that would be rude. No, it was actually you had to be holding the sock when you hit them, so it had to be unrolled, and as long as they weren't touching a wall or inside, they were fair game. So
because I had a feel of having a rolled up sock because you could get the angle on it as I flick my arm, but you're saying it had to be unrolled and then you had to flick them with it. So did you get people sneaking into other people's lectures at college and just walking up behind them?
The game had to be played outside. Yeah.
All right. That must have been fun.
Yeah.
That must have been mega fun. Did that continue then? I mean, as you're going on, I mean, what was it you did at college then?
Yeah, so I went to school for secondary English education. Teaching high school students, high school English basically.
So you'd already decided to become an English teacher. That was your because I know of a lot of people who they'll do so many years in a different discipline, maybe connected, to the arts, whatever. And then they'll go, all right, I'm just going to I'll become a teacher. So they kind of, they kind of end up taking it as as a kind of a secondary career, a secondary course, or a kind of almost, some people say a little bit of a backup plan. But that was your decision. You were like, I'm going to become an English teacher. I
don't know if I would call it my decision. But right. It was definitely kind of a decision that, I rolled with. It was kind of predetermined for me based on some choices my parents had made and some scholarships that I had received, because, I really had no way to pay for college otherwise, other than through loans, which I could have done. And looking back on it, maybe I could have and should have. I don't know, but I enjoyed teaching and I've learned more, through teaching about, relationships and the way people work and, than I would have anywhere else. And I've just been able to just love on people and just pour into them and, help them to recognize that they have value and that there's a worth to them, that I want them to remember just kind of in the rest of their lives.
So are you kind of almost like the Robin Williams Dead Poets Society type teacher? Is that you're not just interested in, here's the works of Dickens, let's read about Dickens or Shakespeare. You're actually getting them to kind of look inside themselves and try to become the best version of themselves and understand more about how they work as a person, as just getting them to be able to recite lines from the Scottish play, for instance, instead.
Yeah, I'd say any teacher that's worth their salt is definitely trying to grow the person and not just the academics.
Did that tie in with? I mean, when did you become a pastor?
Yeah,
I mean,
so-
we were making a terrible joke about that earlier on, which I'm not going to go into, but it's really, really funny, and I'm tempted to try and bring it in, but I'm not going to bother. But was that alongside when you were have you always been pretty active in the church as well as you were kind of growing up?
Ministry isn't entirely. I don't know how to. So I was definitely raised in the church, but it wasn't like. I guess for me, like, the idea of like a deity, right, was never a personal thing for me until, I guess there's like various points in your life, right? You're like, oh, yeah, I need to pray for this, or I pray for this. Even people that don't consider themselves, believers will sometimes just, pray. But, there's this idea that like somewhere around middle school, and you'll hear it said like, I prayed the prayer, right, the one where you like accept Jesus or whatever, but like I prayed the prayer like 100 more times after that, right? I wasn't sure if I was saved, yeah. And that's a funny thing for a lot of people, because whether you're Christian or not Christian, like that idea of praying the prayer just can be a mildly humorous thing. But ultimately for me, I wanted it to be a personal relationship thing that like mattered to me, and it felt like a very real connection. And if it wasn't that, then like I was going to peace out on the faith, because it wasn't worth my time to follow a whole bunch of rules or structures, or you see a lot of people that claim to be of a certain faith, and you're just like, oh, they claim to be that, but they don't really live it. And I finally came to the point where I was like, you know what? I can't base my belief system on whether or not other people are living their lives a certain way. You know what I mean?
No, exactly. No. I'm a strong believer in that myself. I've never ever. I'm not the type of person to go up to somebody and say, "Oh, you believe in God, do you?"
Yeah,
that's nonsense. I've always had an issue with somebody coming up to me and going, "I believe in God, and what you're doing is wrong." And it's like, well, that's great. Forgive me. Then if that's the case, I see a lot of value for a lot of people who live their lives. And religion plays a huge part of their lives, and that's cool and that's great. And I see them feel part of a community, and they have a sense of belonging. And for some people, there's this unshakable kind of sense of being, of who they are and their place in the kind of the world and society. And I know a lot of other people that kind of struggle with that. But I have an issue with a bit of the evangelical stuff. That's my bugbear kind of thing.
I understand. Well, and I think there's a lot of different definitions for evangelical that you kind of have to wrestle with also. So, but I guess the other piece was, to finish answering your question, like when I was in undergrad, when I really felt like the quote unquote call to ministry, and then, I spent the next like 10 years or so wondering, like, what does this mean? What does it look like? I have no clue where I'm going with my life. I'm going to be a teacher, and I'm going to go serve in these schools that, like, there's students in these schools who they don't know that anybody cares about them. And that's where I'm going, because I want to love on these kids. And I learned more through some of those experiences than I think I would have learned otherwise. And then, while I was teaching, I felt the desire to, go pursue an education. And so I mentioned, working on my master's in divinity. And so I started that back in 2014. But when you're doing that and you're teaching at the same time, it can be, so I guess what I was going to say though was I decided that I really needed to pursue the master's in divinity, and doing that while teaching, just those two things at the same time are incredibly difficult, because the MDiv program is a 74-hour program.
Wow.
And that's a lot of classes. So
that is. And then if you're doing the teaching stuff kind of during the day, then I mean, one of the things that I see people talking about teaching, they go, well, what's wrong with teaching? You get like 3 months off during the summer, and you get like years off at Christmas. You're practically in the classroom for about 3 weeks. And it's like, yeah, that's fair. But also at the same time, I'm kind of working 24 hours a day for those 3 weeks that I'm in the classrooms. I know people that they start off at 7 o'clock in the morning and they're still working at kind of like 6:30 at night, kind of doing lesson plans and everything like that, you know?
That's about the life of a teacher. That's a very, very true statement. And I guess the other piece of all of that was that I was also still serving, because I'm a firm believer that when you are going to step into a leadership position of any kind, whether it's in ministry or in education or technology or business, that you should already be doing the job that you want to receive, that you want to get paid for. And so I was already serving in my local community church and just loving on people and, giving them my time and my energy and trying to show people like that they had worth. And then I was also serving in the building, just cleaning the building, I believe in servant leadership, right? And so, if a pastor is not willing to get down and scrub toilets, what kind of pastor is he?
Yeah, I mean, how can you try and claim to have empathy with other people if it's like the whole walk a mile in somebody's shoes kind of thing, that kind of guess.
Exactly.
Yep. Has your religion given you any guidance in terms of the game design side of things? I mean, are there certain kind of subjects or things like that you would, as a designer, you'd be uncomfortable kind of going near, or or do you keep kind of things separate? No.
Yeah, they're definitely involved. I don't believe in separating personal beliefs from the way you live. But I also and I think this is the part of you where you might rub up against kind of the evangelical thing, because a lot of people will say I've got these really hardcore beliefs, and then it's like they try to like force it on everybody else, right? I'm more along the lines of like what I do and what I create is going to align with my values, and when I play games, I'm going to make sure like I'm not sacrificing my values in the process. But then the but here is a really important one, is that I'm still going to like build relationship with people who disagree with me and who are different than me, right? I have a bunch of friends that are atheists and agnostics, and I don't want to be like that guy who's like, oh, my agnostic friend or my atheist friend. But you know what I mean? Like I want to connect with people, and I want them to know, like, I care about you. And so if, I can't play a certain game with you, but, there's games that people won't play with me. Like, they're like, oh, that's just too hokey or too cheesy. Then it's like, okay, well, let's find something that we can play, that we can agree on, because we care more about each other than we do about what game we play.
Yeah. It's not like you go around introducing your friends and say, now this is Mike. Mike's going to hell. Kind of things like, all right.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. That would be absurd. Yeah. That's not really helpful in terms of like telling people like that they have worth. So
yeah.
And in terms of the game design itself for like Hero, absolutely my values influence it. So you'll notice that like if you look at my cast of characters, it is there's a diversity in gender, there's a gender balance, right? There's a cultural diversity about it, and yes, I'm a white male, and I get that. But if I had one of two approaches. I could either create a game with a whole bunch of white males, or I could create a gender and culturally diverse cast. And I figured the latter was the better choice, since I actually believe in that. People are different, and they want to feel represented, and I think that's important. And so that was a part of it. But then also, and this is the part where some of my fans may not. May turn off that, but you asked, and I'm not going to lie to you. I believe that I'm not a big fan of the concept of magic, honestly. So the idea of using magic in a game or whatever, and that's really a funny thing, because you could bring up Tolkien or C.S. Lewis or whatever, and I used to be a huge fan of both of them. And in terms of their personal values, I still am, but I haven't watched Lord of the Rings or Narnia in a while, albeit Narnia and Lord of the Rings were probably some of the early predecessors for Hero in terms of what motivated me to kind of move forward. So what I have is these characters with these abilities, and I've written a book on the side of these characters that have grown up in like this post-apocalyptic world, and cataclysm after cataclysms just ravaging the earth and just destroying things, and dystopia and the class warfare and all sorts of crazy. And these characters, they've all but lost their cultural heritage. It's still there, and you can still see it in glimpses, but you can't really dig into the meat of it. And so they've all had this encounter with what I call the river. And that can kind of appeal to multiple kind of belief systems, but you get the river, and they have this encounter, and it's kind of like, walking through the wardrobe for Narnia, right? So the one guy, he steps into lava, but it actually is the river, and he has this encounter with the river that just transforms his entire being, and he starts developing these abilities, right? And there's no other way to describe it. But the main one that everybody that has an encounter with the river seems to take on is what's called ghost walking.
Right.
And it's this idea of jumping on air as if it is land itself, right? And so the game takes place between two sky bases up in the sky, outside the bounds of time itself, where these characters, these heroes are in training and battling each other, but they're trying to sharpen themselves and become more effective at what they do through this battle experience.
When you were making the system, because I wasn't surprised when you said I've written a small book, and it's like, well, he's an English teacher. As long as he wrote it on his PC, as long as it's not written notes, I think he'll be fine.
No, yeah, it would take me forever, and it would look horrible, and I would never be able to type it up. I'd have to hire somebody, and then they would have to figure out how to translate hieroglyphs.
I was going to say, you should have done as a stretch goal, because people were asking for stretch goals. You could say, here's the original handwritten PDF
they would have to be an archaeologist to interpret it.
I think that would be the best kind of trolling ever. They'd be like, well, I got the PDF, and, is there a cipher for it? Because I can't make a head nor tail of what you've given me here, Wesley. When you were creating the system, though, how? Because you mentioned obviously going back in childhood, I kind of created something which actually, in retrospect, is very, very close to what Hero is about. How much did you go in with the idea for Hero as this huge epic, and did the mechanics at the beginning were they like a huge epic? Has there been a lot of stuff that you've had to change from the first iteration of the game to what's actually kind of ended up as the final product?
Well, so Hero was not originally called Hero. It didn't get called Hero until about 2 weeks into creation, and that was about 3.5 years ago, like I said. But no, I originally set out to create a MOBA in the form of a card game, a multiplayer online battle arena,
Yeah.
Oh, shoot. Yeah. Sorry, I was just trying to think of a couple of MOBAs just off the top of my head. The one that I used to play was Paragon on the PlayStation 4. That was created by the same company that created Fortnite, but they discontinued Paragon as soon as Fortnite took off, which made me very sad. So shout out to my Paragon buddies. We had a team that would play every night. So when I started on Hero, though, I sold the PlayStation 4 and really, really delved into the journey and trying to make this MOBA. And MOBA is a card game. I had way too many other influencing factors that changed the style of gameplay over time. So I played a game called Shining Force, back when I was younger on the Sega Genesis, and I remember that. I was a really big fan of the X-Men, by Stan Lee, and so all these different kind of factors are playing in. It's I want to be able to recruit new characters as I'm playing the game, and I want to be able to level them up and gain experience and gain new abilities, and I want each character to have their own unique flavor and feel, but I also want them to work together and be a team, and I want to feel like Charles Xavier on the other side of them all, and you know what I mean. And so as I'm creating this game, it started as a MOBA and turned into something wildly different. And there were two other pieces that were really, really important to me, other than kind of the recruitment, level up aspect. And one of them was I wanted a very simple system, incredibly simple. And so there's where your acronym comes in, but that acronym actually also stemmed out of the other principle. And that was, I wanted a game where I had heroes who all felt incredibly powerful from the moment that they hit the field. Right. I don't like these games where you have this ability and it, kind of chips away at a person over an incredibly long period of time, but you don't really ever fully see the effects of the ability, And so I created this game with 20 overpowered heroes. I think it was 24 originally, and I dropped it back to 20 because the other 4 just didn't fit as well as I wanted. And they were so overpowered that I would play with my neighbor. And we would sit down, he would come over, he came over a lot to play. Anyway, I mentioned him in my Kickstarter as, one of the people that I'm thankful for. But basically, we would play and the game would end in less than like 5 minutes because the heroes were so overpowered. It was just like, man, well, that was fun, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
And so then I was like, well, we need balance, but how do you create balance when you've got a bunch of overpowered heroes? Well, you weaken them all, right? That's what everybody else says. And I said, no, I refuse to be that guy who nerfs his heroes for his game. I've played these video games where they just keep nerfing the mess out of your characters. And, you're like, that was my favorite character. And now you've made them worth nothing, And so I said, well, let's find a way to change this. And the hero system was created. And hero system is not an accurate term because that's actually a RPG system that exists. But for me, the hero mechanic, I guess, would be a thing that I would call it. The acronym, heal, enhance, recruit, overcome. And it basically is the counterbalance for the overpowered heroes. And that is that it, breaks up your turn. You can only do one of these 4 things. And ultimately, you're going to make a sacrifice, and it's going to be an opportunity cost for every decision that you make.
Well, let's get into the nitty gritty and talk about how maybe a typical round kind of plays out, because you've basically got a deck of cards. You've got your own team. So how would you play hero? What would a round kind of look like, Wesley?
Yeah, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to lay out all 20 heroes face up, and we're each going to pick one hero, and that hero is going to go into our hand, and they're going to be the entire starting hand. And then the rest of the heroes are going to get shuffled up, and we're going to set them off to the side, and what's called the hero reserves, and we're going to turn 3 of them face up, kind of like Ticket to Ride, right? Have you ever played Ticket to Ride?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you got the 3 face-ups and you got like a pile of face-downs, and so recruiting heroes in game is that same idea. Like I can take one or 2 from the face-up set, or I can take 1 from the face-up and 1 from the face-down, or 2 face-downs, and that's how you recruit heroes in game once you get going. But so initially you each recruit 1 hero, you set all the rest to the side, for later in the game. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to take all the abilities and you're going to decide, whether you're going to play a little bit more competitively with a standard game. Or whether you're going to play, more, casual, and you really just like, the luck and the not really knowing where you're going or where you're moving, an over glorified version of War or Uno, right? In which case you're going to use either preset decks that come with the rule book and are, it explains like which abilities go in which deck, or, you want to just completely randomize it and give each player a, random ability. So you shuffle them up and hand them out. Mm-hmm. And those abilities are going to go into your personal deck. And so your personal deck is going to have a set of statistics and then whatever abilities you got either from the presets or the random dealing, and like I said, for the competitive, you're actually going to draft the abilities back and forth. And so, you'll know what I'm picking and I know what you're picking. So we're going to pick and counter pick our abilities in our decks in order to, hopefully give us an edge over one another. But of course, our style of gameplay is going to be wildly different, right? So you want to play more aggressively, you're going to take, a lot of heavy hitting abilities, and I might be a little more disruptive and take, a whole bunch of like trap, abilities. And then I guess after the basic setup, you've got your deck, you've got your heroes on the side of the field, you've got your hand. And then from there on, you're choosing one of the four action choices from the acronym hero for the rest of the game. For every turn, you're either going to heal, enhance, recruit, or overcome. And then, again, each choice you make, will put you in varying situations on the field, for future turns.
Were you quite strict on that system? I mean, did any time, I take it you was like, well, if we allow, because sometimes the issue that I see with some kind of card games is that there's like two or three main moves, but then these 2 or 3 main moves can branch off into 5 or 6 other things that you can do, and the next thing you know is that the structure of the game can become it becomes a bit unwieldy, and then it also becomes difficult for you to know who you're going to counteract and who you're not going to counteract against. So were you quite strict in saying, we've got to stay within these parameters that we've set ourselves, because I know if I do that, then the game itself is going to remain kind of as balanced as possible, yeah?
Yeah, no, those 4 action choices are the core of the game and absolutely essential. There aren't a lot of branching, kind of elements to each of those. It's, one of those 4. So I know on your turn, you got one of 4 actions you're going to take. There is an alternative 5th turn. And so that's where those abilities come into play. So there's 3 types of abilities in the game. There's passive abilities, active abilities, and then what I call heroic feats. They used to be called heroic abilities. So if you're playing on the tabletop simulator, the older version, you'll note that it still says heroic ability, or it has just the letter H for heroic. But basically the 3 different abilities here, a passive is always an effect. These are your basic stat boosters, right? This hero gets +10 for every other hero on the field, or whatever. Or, maybe a passive ability is like, my going nuclear card, which is basically a complete field wipe, right? All heroes on the field are completely wiped out and removed from the field. And you have to prepare for that. So if I know you've got that in your deck, I'm gonna play accordingly, right? I want to make sure that I have heroes in my hand when that hits the field, so that I don't get abolished on my next turn. The other piece here is that you've got these active abilities, and actives can be used once on every single turn. So it's not like you use an ability and you never have access to it again, right? So I've got this ability, and you teach it to a hero. You don't play it out of your hand and use it. It's not like a magic spell or something. It's like your ability. Your hero just learned a new ability, like in a video game, right? And so they learn this ability, and they can use it every single turn on your turn, which is pretty awesome. And then the last one, like I said, is the heroic abilities, and these are the heroic feats, and these are the ones that do operate more like those spell cards that you might have seen in other games, where you play it straight out of your hand into your discard pile, and it has like this effect, right? But these are really, really powerful cards that just do massive damage, right? So one is called absorb, and it means like I can take all of the statistical enhancements and abilities off of one of your heroes, and I can put it on one of my heroes, right? But if I do that, I sacrifice my entire turn. So I can't do any of the hero acronym, and I can't use any other abilities on that turn. The one other way you can kind of co-opt the system is those active and passive abilities, right? So you might have a hero that says for every fatigued hero on the field, you can recruit one hero, right? And so now all of a sudden you're able to take and use the R functionality from the acronym recruit on a turn where you might be doing a different action. So maybe I want to do some overcoming, and I want to overcome, and I want to attack you and be on the offense, but I also want to recruit. So I'm going to use that ability while I'm attacking.
So how much playtesting have you done then? You mentioned Tabletop Simulator. So, I mean, one of the things that I've seen, and this is more on the more recent kind of games, is the difficulty in getting people to kind of playtest stuff. I mean, let's face it, everybody's kind of been on lockdown. People have not been able to kind of gather in groups. I mean, with you kind of launching kind of like the Kickstarter right now, was there quite a few challenges to getting the game in front of people so they could even kind of sample it? And is that why you went kind of like the Tabletop Simulator route?
Yeah, so that's a really interesting question. So remember, you have to consider the fact that I put 3.5 years worth of work into this, right? So
yeah.
I've taken it to conventions, and at almost every convention I get in a solid 40 to 50 playtests. I will say this, that out of those 40 to 50 playtests, about 40 to 50 of those people also have signed up for the email list or have joined the Facebook group, which is now sitting at close to 300 something people. Right. And so there's this idea that, when people play test us, they're like, wow, this is a really cool game. I want to, be a part of this journey and see what's going on with you. And, support you in any way I can. And so it's been fun, but, so getting lots and lots of playtests and feedback through the conventions themselves, but also the local game shop, Hypermind has been spectacular. People, they're willing to playtest and be a part of the journey and the experience. And these are people that play a wide array of games, right? At all of these different locations. So, and getting different perspectives and different age groups to play and they all approach this game with kind of a different background, right? They're not tabula rasas, that are coming to the game, without any experience with anything. And so they're like, this reminds me of this, or, I don't really like this about this game because of this. And then I say, well, have you considered this piece? And they're like, oh, well, that's true. That makes sense. And they'll say, well, what about this? And then I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I should change that, and so lots and lots of really solid feedback. I've play tested this game, on a conservative side 300 or 400 times, but I think that's way too conservative. I'm thinking it's over 1,000.
Wow.
Yeah. And I sent out copies, like in the early stages, I sent out prototype copies across the world. I sent out like 30 or 40 prototype copies, to various people who were willing to pay the shipping for it. And, I just paid for the copy of the game itself. And yeah, it was a little bit expensive, but it got me a lot of great feedback. And then, of course, like you said, recently, Tabletop Simulator has kind of been the way to go. I got a handful of friends that have helped me out with, that aspect. A guy by the name of Wes Woodbury, he helped me to get up on Tabletop Simulator. You can look him up on Facebook.
Wes Woodbury.
Wes Woodbury, yeah.
Wes Woodbury, I remember.
Yeah.
I remember Wes very, very well, and I think the first podcast he ever did was with myself. And then recently I checked up on the boy, and he's doing his own podcast.
Yeah. He's started doing that. Now his takes a slightly different flavor than yours, of course. He's looking to connect with people after their game has, kind of gone to market, and his ideas, he wants to talk about like the marketing of the game and, how do you go about getting your game in front of people. So.
Yeah, his was I listened to a couple of his quite recently, and he's much more kind of talking shop. As he would say in kind of sales and marketing, he talks more about the sausage than he talks about the sizzle.
Yes, yeah.
If you know what I mean. So he's very much kind of like, how would you handle this? How did you? So it's a very useful kind of. But yeah, I remember because he was a double hitter. Basically, he launched his campaign for his Kickstarter, and it didn't fund, and then he pretty much came back about 3-4 weeks later, and his campaign it went through the roof. Wes did a good job connecting with people, and I think that's one of my favorite things about him. I talk to him probably 2 or 3 times a week via Facebook Messenger, and he's incredibly supportive and is constantly encouraging me, which is really cool to see him. And I got a few other people, like there's a gentleman by the name of Andrew Lowen who's creating a game right now called Deliverance, the board game. If you haven't talked to this guy, you got to get him on your show. But his game is just like, I don't know, it's blowing up and people are crazy about the thing. These when you get other designers behind you and they're supporting you and they're being encouraging you, and they're walking with you as you go through your journey, you feel like you can do almost anything. You know what I mean? Yeah. But with the current situation, was there any point you kind of went, I don't know if we maybe need to kind of hold back a month or two and wait until things kind of calm down? Or was it just the case that, okay, I got faith this is going to do well, let's just go ahead and just see what kind of happens with it?
Your question is so funny. And here's why. So I was actually aiming for the end of July. And then the coronavirus happened, and like I looked at the situation and I said, well, this is completely illogical. It makes zero sense. There's going to be a whole bunch of people not wanting to spend any money. Let's do it. So I went for it, and it's worked out. had a lot of people. I think people are at home and they're looking at Kickstarter and they're saying, well, we really, we're just going to sit around and we want something to do. And, we want to see hope in life and we want to see somebody pushing back against this death that seems to be all around us. Right. And but honestly, that was part of the heart of it. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Like, if I had to, and I'm not going to, so don't read this as a miscue, but if I had to cancel the Kickstarter in order to build the relationships that I built, I would do that in a heartbeat, because it's that pastor teacher thing in me. Like, I want to build relationships and I want people to know that they're loved and that they have value. And as I create this game, I'm trying to create a great product for you to have fun with, right? And so when I went to Kickstarter, a big part of my heart going into it was, everybody feels like nothing is possible right now. So let's do something and let's try to kickstart people's lives a little bit too and show them like, hey, there's life to be had in the middle of all of this death, right? Whatever form that takes. I'm not suggesting, rebelling or, I'm not talking about that, but I'm talking about learning, and recognizing that there has got to be more than just sitting around and watching TV.
Mm-hmm. How surprised were you with how quickly it funded? Because I seen your update, Wesley, and I mean, you're not a guy that was sitting there going, yeah, it's cool, I expected that.
No, that's not me.
I'm like Fonzie. I'm cool. I'm just sitting here being cool. We funded, but it was in the plan. Because you were like that.
Yeah, no, people are... people are awesome. I think for me, there's so much naysaying about, indie designing and the inability to succeed. And a big part of me was just, I want to fight back against this thing and I'm going to just build relationships. And I don't know how advertising on Facebook works. I've tried once or twice and a couple people might have come through that, but I have no way of knowing if they did or didn't. And I only dropped $50 to $150 on that total. But I don't even know if it worked, right? And so, I'm sitting here okay, I've built all these relationships, but, I haven't heard from some of these people in months, and I don't know, what's going to happen. And, but we're going to put it up. And so when I hit that Kickstarter, and all of a sudden, all of these people were just coming out of the woodwork and just, backing it and supporting it. My mind was blown. It's one thing, I was like, I got 35 days set as my campaign. Jamie Stegmeyer recommended that back in 2014. And, it's 2020. That might be a bad idea, but I'm going to do it anyway. And it'll just be a really long, painful 35 days. And I'll scrape by and hit 2,000, by the end of it. And a lot of people, there's a lot of designers to say, oh, those small projects that make $2,000. Well, for somebody who's never made $2,000, that, in less than 30 days, I guess, it can be a normal salary depending on the job, but as a teacher even. But I think that for somebody who hasn't made it specifically with my Kickstarter in less than an hour and a half, right? That's a little bit mind blowing. So my wife took a picture of the screen and sent it to me in my text message and said, "You remember that time we made $2,000 in an hour and a half?" Yeah, this is for memory's sake. And I responded, "You mean that time we made $2,000 in 3.5 years?" Yeah. Yeah. So I was definitely mind blown.
But there's two sides to Kickstarter that's successful, because I've spoken to people who have been hitting kind of hundreds of % above the Kickstarter, and there's the stretch goal question. Because I know of a lot of people who will be like, well, okay, they know there are some organizations that they run their Kickstarter campaigns knowing that they're going to be bringing stretch goals to the table, and so they, in essence, they're carving off the finished item in order to produce kind of additional stretch goals. Whereas and then there's some that kind of like yourself that are successful and they've kind of went, well, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Is it the norm to kind of, should I do stretch goals now? Should I? Because I know at the beginning your opening line on your campaign is, basically something like spoilers ahead. There's no stretch goals in this campaign. Are you now having to think, well, are you able to now go back and say, well, what else can I do? I mean, is it going to be is it potential quality of life? Are you still going to hang by and just say, look, I'm not going to be doing any kind of stretch goals at all? What are your kind of current thoughts with that? Wesley?
Yeah. So, when I went into this, you read horror stories of other designers, right? There's the guy who, went in and had to sell his house in order just to, fulfill his game. And I still don't know that he fulfilled it. And that horror story is, thrown around the web every so often. And I was like, man, I don't want to be that guy. I got a wife and a kid to take care of. And, and I think that was basically on shipping and fulfillment was the big issue there, but I may be wrong, and the stretch goals may have been a part of it. But for me, it was like, I want to keep this as simple as I can. So let's create a good product and put it in people's hands and just say, there you go. This is what you signed up for. And you knew what you were getting when you got it. And that way, if it doesn't fund, then it's no real, skin off my back because, well, I was going to give people a copy of the game and they knew what they were going to get, and, it'll be okay. And if people complain about not getting stretch goals, then, well, at least they knew up front that they weren't going to get them. Right. And so I wouldn't feel bad from a personal conscience kind of perspective. But when all of a sudden, the Kickstarter just took off there at the beginning, I was just like, who are these people and how awesome are they, right? Like, I know maybe 50% of my backers. And when I say no, I mean it through via Facebook or through the conventions or through, there's a couple of personal relationships there as well, but not a whole lot of them. And so when it took off, I said, man, I need to do something for these people because they have really shown up in some cool ways. And so I was like, well, here's what I can do. And I know how to do this myself. And so I pulled up my Sky Bases. There are a couple of cards, and there were only going to be two designs for that originally, like the original color and then the purplish color. And, they're called Splendor and Wonder. And I said, well, I was going to have two of each of those. And I said, how cool would it be to have four different ones, of different kind of color variations. And so I jumped onto Photoshop for about 2 or 3 hours and modified them some. And it took a little bit of doing because, I'm not, it took me the past 3.5 years to teach myself how to use Photoshop on top of all of that. So I kind of synthesized most of the artwork. I didn't do the artwork, but I synthesized it. I brought it all together. All this great work that these other artists had done, and maybe we can talk about them in a minute. But to finish answering your question on the stretch goals, like the big thing for me was I want to bless people because they've blessed me, and they've been a part of this thing. And if I come out of this thing, breaking even, that's awesome, but I really just want people to know that, I've created something really cool for them.
So let's talk about the art because, in terms of how it looks, it's kind of striking. It's very simplistic but strong, I think, because I've seen a lot of kind of fantasy kind of artwork, and it's generally there's like lots of busyness kind of going on.
Yep, that was a big part of my heart. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I was just thinking when I looked at the artwork, first of all, one of the things that kind of struck me is one of my favourite card games, which is Ashes Rise of the Phoenix Born, which uses I don't know if you've seen that, but it uses a very, very simple style. There's not really anything in the background. It's built entirely around the illustration of the character. So was that a conscious decision to kind of make it as kind of clear, as simple as possible for the individual characters that you had?
Yeah, anything you see in Hero has been a very, very clear and conscious decision, and probably was many hours of agonizing and days of waiting and communicating and, fumbling through my, new designer idiocies with communicating with people. I butted heads with so many people and I had to apologize more times than I can count, because I didn't know what I was doing initially, and I had to learn through the process. But that's the beauty of working on something for 3.5 years. You can learn. But in terms of the style and the artwork, I had a pretty clear vision of what I wanted kind of from the get-go. Not entirely though. So my initial kind of vision was I kind of liked the idea of, at that time, Epic Games, the people who created Paragon had actually canceled their project and had released all of their assets for free on the internet to be used. And I was like, man, I could just use that for all my artwork. And I was going to get into Unity and I was going to make it happen. And then I contacted them and they're like, oh, that's only for 3D usage. You can't use it for 2D projects. Sorry. And I was like, oh man. So I was like, well, I still like the idea of 3D. And so I got into like the Dazed forums and got up with this one person and, talked to them about it. And they're like, oh yeah, we can try. And we tried for a little while and I couldn't communicate my vision very clearly to them. And I'll take full responsibility for that. And we were like, well, maybe it's better just to move on. And so we did. And I was just like, I don't know what to do. So I started contacting, artists, and you contact, dozens of them, and they're coming at you with numbers that you can't afford as a high school English teacher, right? And so
yeah,
I finally came across this one image on DeviantArt.com called Mercenary, and I was like, man, this is such a cool image. It's kind of the style of artwork that I want of a character, and I just like the character itself, and I had been playing Charterstone at the time. Have you played Charterstone by Jamie Stegmaier?
Yep.
Yeah, I love the simplicity of that box. And so I had that kind of simplicity thing in mind, because when I walk into a game store and I see Charterstone on the wall against this sea of colors, all of a sudden, like, it just stands out and it makes me want to know, what is that game, right? And so I have the same kind of desire, with my overall design for my game as well. That was about the same time that, Star Wars Episode 8 came out and they had all those contrasting kind of simplistic colors.
Yeah. That was great.
And
yeah,
it was beautiful. That was the best part of that movie, was the artwork. No offense for those of you who really love the movie. Yeah. But in all seriousness, yeah, I reached out to the artist. The artist's name is Colpeo Fox. Colpeo is from Germany. And done a few different projects out there, a couple of kids' books. I got a kids' book out there, a really famous one. Can't remember the name off the top of my head because that's not really my scene. But I contacted the artist. I'd never heard of them, and just like, hey, I got this game that I'm creating, and probably can't afford you, but I'm reaching out anyway in hopes that maybe you'd be willing to work with me. And the artist responded and said, well, yeah, you probably can't afford me, but tell me about your game. It's like, whoa, okay. So, shared, and artist said, wow, that sounds really, really cool. I'd like to be a part of that. And so Colpeo stepped up in some big ways, and it was a time versus money issue because it took a long time to get some of that artwork, but it was mostly because I wasn't, I wasn't able to give a lot financially, and so I try to put Colpeo out there on blast every so often, and just try to honor my artist and say that they're amazing. And then the artist that did the skyship on the front of the box, his name is Carl McIntyre, and he created one image for me, and it was a great image. But then when I changed the size of my box, the image didn't work as well, and I was like, man, I can't run with this image anymore. I'm so sorry. I'm not gonna. I still want to pay you, for what you've done. And he actually turned around and created another image, and just did a spectacular job, kind of recreating one of the skyships for the front of the box, and it's so beautiful. But then those character cards, you got those characters that are really nice that Colpeo did, and you got the skyships, and you got the skyship on the front of the box, and it's like, well, what about the graphic design? And you look at all these other games like Magic and Yu-Gi-Oh and Pokemon and Lord of the Rings, and you name the game, and yeah, you're right, they're complicated. And I said, I want something simple and easy to read, and I want the font size to be a little bit bigger, so that more people can read it. And ultimately, I came across a graphic designer by the name of Mohamed Valafki, who is from France, I want to say. Yeah, anyway, but Mohamed just did a spectacular job. And I told him, I was like, look, I want something simple. I want minimalism, just straight up minimalism. And I sent him a picture of Charterstone, and I was like, how do we keep a pure white, kind of card with this character and maybe, a couple of these color streaks on the back? And he came out and created the beautiful graphic design that you see on the cards. So,
and it's, as I say, it's striking and different because, a lot of the cards I've seen, they kind of go into the let's create backgrounds and let's remind everybody of the world that they're in. And yeah, I've played, Charterstone a fair bit and kind of reviewed it, and even the kind of the app. But as I say, Ashes: Rise of the Phoenix Born is a very, very kind of similar style, which I kind of really, that's kind of my bag. I like something simple. I like something kind of striking. I like something kind of very, very straightforward, which is why kind of Hero itself kind of appeals. In terms of costs, how much is it going to cost for somebody to step up and pledge? Because I noticed you're only doing US, you're only doing kind of fulfillment in the US.
Yeah, so this was one of those topics that I really wanted to talk about, especially since you were the person that I'd be talking with about it. So my thought process going into it was, I want to create something that people can play and people can enjoy, no matter where they're from or what they're doing. And when I looked into the cost of fulfillment, it was going to cost $24 just to ship it to anywhere pretty much outside the US, right? $24 to $27 depending on where you go. And when the game itself only costs $17, that's kind of ridiculous. And if I were a big company and I could ship, hundreds or thousands of copies to one location, they could be distributed from there, that would be one thing, right? But I'm not a big company. I'm just an indie designer and self-publishing, and maybe a big company will pick it up at some point or something. I don't know. But ultimately, I couldn't fulfill myself to one or two people from different countries without charging them an arm and a leg. So what I decided to do was to say, well, let's push this, go local kind of theme, right? I love the idea of going local and supporting my local economy, and I want other people to support their local economies. And I think that a lot of people need that right now, especially when everybody's kind of locked down and in quarantine. But if you can go to your local print shop, right? So I went to my local print shop and said, hey, would you be willing to print these copies of the game for me in the United States? And they say, yeah, we can do that, and name the price. And it actually eats up. So most games that people play, and you probably know this already, but they create the game for like 5 times less the cost of what it costs to buy it, right? And but then of course manufacturing goes into that, and they have to take their money out, and shipping has to take their money out, and then distribution has to take their money out, and then the retail stores have to take their money out, and so ultimately the designer still doesn't, they only get a portion of whatever they put in. But then, so what I said was, I'll go to this local print shop, and I went to them, and they're charging me, half cost to make the copies of the game, right? And I've had a lot of people say, "Well, why would you do that?" I was like, I want to support these local people, and I may not make a ton of money off of this, but I really want to support the local community here and be a blessing to them.
Yeah.
So what I did was, I've taken the print and play, and it's actually a full artwork print and play, and I'm going to give that to all the $1 backers. So if you live in New Zealand or Greenland or Iceland or Russia or Australia or wherever you live, and you want to back it for $1, and you get the full artwork print and play, you take it to your local printer, you get them to make the game for you for $10 to $20, however much or $25, it's about the same amount that it would cost if you were to back it with me and get it shipped to you, except without the shipping cost, right? And you're supporting your local economy in the process, which is, I think, one of the most important things we can do, for anybody right now, is just, to support others.
Yes.
And so I think that for me has been like, let's create, an option for international backers where they can create a quality game. And I recommend 130 pound semi-gloss, digital printing, full color artwork. You're going to get a quality game. And no, digital's not going to last as long as offset will, obviously. But, when you play games, think about how many times you play a game that you buy, unless you're, really rabid about the game, you're only going to play it 5 to 10 times. But then if you are really hardcore about a game, you're going to sleeve the cards anyway, so it won't matter, right? But the cards themselves, the quality of the card, the 130 pound semi-gloss with that digital full color is, when you hold that in your hand and you hold a Magic card in your hand, same quality. In terms of the way that it feels, just the ink is going to rub off after 10 to 20 games, right? Maybe a little bit longer. I mean, I've played a deck of Hero about 50 games, and I still haven't had the ink rub off like I've been told it would. So, take it for what you will. And then I guess the other piece is that ultimately, and I haven't put this out there for the public yet, so I guess this is the time to do it. if I can get the funding to make it happen, and this is a big if, and I don't know what the numbers are. I'm still waiting on a printer to give me the numbers. So don't take this as a promise. Just take it as a, wow, that would be really cool. But if I can get the funding for it, I'd love to do like PVC cards, right? So plastic hero cards that are a pure, clean white card, that are just going to last, and you're not going to really kind of have to replace them unless you just truly bend a card out of shape.
Yeah.
So
that's exciting.
Yeah. There is a $250 tier. If anybody wants to back of that, feel free. Somebody talked me into putting that on there, for the quote unquote whales. Yeah, I wasn't going to. I wanted to keep it simple and easy. I didn't want people to feel pressured into anything. And so when I created it, if you look at the rewards on it, they're very much like, wow, that would be really neat. But if you're backing at that level, like, you're really there because you like the idea of the game. Right. And I've actually had a few people do it, and non-relatives. So that's a plus.
That is very cool. That is very, very good. That is very, very good. You still got like almost, well, it'll be just under 4 weeks to go now.
Yeah.
Are you just kind of like, well, I'm just going to be grateful for what's happening just now, and we're going to see what kind of happens? Are you still kind of waking up? Are you still expecting to wake up and you've fallen asleep at your computer and you're just about to press the button to confirm the Kickstarter campaign, and this is all just a dream? Kind of thing. Well, have you got, with it being so successful, has there been a little bit of imposter syndrome kind of kicking and kind of like, because I know that, let's face it, Frosthaven, the behemoth, has come in and it's wiped out a whole pile of, not wiped them out, but it's definitely, there's definitely been some kind of bigger games and definitely been smaller games who maybe didn't fund or, didn't fund. There's been a few cancellations, and, a lot of them have blamed this $12 million kind of behemoth.
No, I think that's silly. I think that, and forgive me if you're one of those people. I think part of it is that for me, marketing is relationships. I got a group on Facebook called the Tabletop Marketing Collaborative, and Wes Woodbury and Andrew Lowen are a part of that. Brian Fiore, David Palmero, and then Nayland, and I have no clue how to pronounce her last name. Sorry, Nayland. I may even be saying her first name wrong. It might be Nolan, but they're a rock star group of marketers, and you got three of them are professional marketers. 2 or 3 of them have all kickstarted their own game. 1 or 2 of them have helped other people with their games, and so they've all bring something to the table, which is why I reached out to them specifically. I wanted people who knew more than me about marketing, and that, so I could pick their brains and build a relationship with them, and also add value to them and help them to get their names out there a little bit more as well. But for me, the heart of that group is marketing as relationships, right? We don't want it to be this, used car salesman pitch, and you've probably heard that a few times on your show. But this idea that, like, I'm just trying to make money, like, that's ridiculous. I think that when I go into creating something, the heart behind it should be, I'm adding value to you, right? If you go back to the barter system, take money out of the equation. If I build you a house, I'm trying to do it because I care about you. And then I'm hoping in return that you're going to do something, also in return, and you're showing that you care about me, right? And that there's kind of this give and take. And that's the idea of relationship, is it's not just about me, it's about us, right? It's not just about you, it's about us. There's this, love others as you love yourself kind of mindset, right?
Yeah.
I think that, and there's your Bible verse, right? But there's that idea.
You had to sneak it in somewhere, didn't you? I was expecting, when's he going to sneak it in? When's he going to sneak it in?
But hopefully I did it in a way that really gets at the heart of, like, caring about people, right?
Yeah.
And so when I'm sitting here and you're like, this imposter syndrome, I had the imposter syndrome when I was creating the game. Now that the game's been made and people have shown me they like it and they're interested, no, the imposter syndrome's gone. But what I do have is just an extreme gratitude, and that's something that for me was instilled in me during my undergrad years. Through a mentor of mine, was just this idea of, show people that you're grateful for them, because honestly, if you're not grateful for them, you don't deserve what they have to give you anyway.
No.
So
yeah. That's excellent. If people have listened along tonight and they want to get involved, if they want to, I guess, kind of find you on the internet webs, where can people find yourself on the internet webs?
Well, obviously there's the Kickstarter. Go support the Kickstarter. No, I'm just kidding. But not really.
No, go support the Kickstarter.
Yeah, no.
If you're in the US, go support the Kickstarter. If you're not in the US, chuck out a couple of dollars.
No, yeah. Even if you're not in the U.S., go ahead and support it. $1 is a lot of money, and I'm thankful for it. But more importantly, I want you to have something really cool to take back and play with your friends, and go support your local economy and go to your local printer. I think that they would be appreciative also. And you can tell them if they don't believe you, like if they say, "Well, there's copyright issues," you tell them, "I know the designer, and he will handwrite a letter for me, and I'll do it if I need to." You can hold me to that. You can point to this radio show or podcast and say, "Oh, see." But in all seriousness, hit me up on the Kickstarter, and I will message you, and I respond to all messages. And somebody hit me up the other day and said, "Hey, is this just a stock email that you send to everybody?" And I said, "Well, I do try to send a message to everybody, and most of the message is the same initially. I try to modify it a little bit depending on each person's kind of current circumstance. But then, like, if I hear back from them, I'm going to respond and I'm going to talk to you about what's going on. I got people, talking to me from all different parts of the country and the world, telling me about their games and their experiences and how excited they are about, the game that I've created and different things. And so the relationships have been spectacular. So Kickstarter is one way. Facebook, I got a Facebook group. Just go into the Facebook search bar and type in Hero the Card Game. There's a page, there's a group. Like the page, join the group. And feel free to send messages. And again, I am incredibly communicative. I will almost always respond within 24 hours. Now, if you're a creepo, I might second guess that. So you need to show me like that you're not a creepo, obviously. But in all seriousness, I try to be very relational. And the reason that I'm like that, I mentioned Jamie Stegmaier earlier. He is one of those guys that he is constantly interacting with his audience and trying to build relationship. And even the people that really don't like him very much, because they disagree with his business practices or whatever, he still seems to try to be very gracious, in his approach. And I want to take that, and I want to be able to let that be part of my approach to building relationship with people also is let me connect with people. Let me show them that I care about them. Even if, they don't, receive that love, let me at least do my best to love them.
That sounds fantastic. We'll make sure that we put all of the links in the show notes so we've got notes to show.
There's also an Instagram and a Twitter. The Instagram is a little more active. The Twitter exists, but I have found that nobody is on Twitter. I've got 90 followers, and you very rarely get likes or replies. But on Facebook, they come out in droves. So
cool. No, as I say, I will make sure that all the links go in the show notes so people can click away to their heart's content. If you want to keep an eye on what we're up to, just go to the internet webs and search and type We're Not Wizards and you'll find us. To find the podcast, it's we'renotwizards.com. To find the blog, it's we'renotwizards.co.uk. You'll find us on Twitter and Instagram. If you search for We're Not Wizards. If you want to find us YouTube and check out some of the new videos that we've been doing, you can go to youtube.com/We're Not Wizards Tabletop Podcast. If you like what you've listened to tonight, there's a couple of things you can do. Just tell somebody else about it. Some people are sitting about with very little to do and are looking for something to listen to. Then please direct them our way. That would be very, very cool indeed. But there's only a couple more things to do. The first thing is to remember that we're many things, but we're not wizards. Are we wizards, Wesley?
Definitely not a wizard.
Yay! And the second thing is to say goodbye. So it is a goodbye from the wonderful, rather fantastic Wesley Cone.
Yeah, I want to say real quick, I want to say thank you, Richard. Thanks for having me. And I want to thank everybody for listening. And thank you. I appreciate it. Goodbye.
And it's a goodbye from me. Remember, stay safe, roll sixes, make something awful, and everybody needs a bit of a hero in their life, and well, there you go. But until the next time, goodbye.
A wizard is never late. Nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to.